Ever wondered what really happens in the heat of battle? If you look past the romance and dive into the actual military paperwork, you see something fascinating. Training manuals and official reports might seem dry, but they reveal an unspoken expectation that under extreme pressure, soldiers will behave with a kind of stylized oddness. A report might praise an officer for being composed and cheerful under heavy fire. What that usually means is he was cracking jokes that no sane person would make while shells were landing all around him. Decorations are given to men described as quite unconcerned by the enemy's fire. A phrase that subtly celebrates that very British performance of pretending death isn't trying to get your attention. Let's break down the 5 eccentric habits that define this mindset. Politeness, theatrical dress, dark humor, improvisation, and deception. They all feed into each other. First, politeness. When an officer says, "Would you mind terribly advancing to that wall?" instead of just shouting, "Run or you'll die," they're not just being quaint. They are reframing terror as duty and duty as a matter of etiquette. It's surprisingly easier to do something terrifying if it feels like you simply not letting the side down. This understated tone makes any display of panic socially unacceptable. That shared pretense, the idea that we're all above this fuss, bonds people more tightly than any shouted slogan ever could. Next, the theatrical side of it all, the uniforms and props. A regiment that has marched in bearskin hats or kilts for generations feels a deep-seated pressure not to crumble. They feel they'd be betraying a story much larger than themselves. The ceremonial sword, the officer's umbrella, the bagpipes, even a lucky mascot, each one becomes a physical anchor to a collective identity. They silently communicate, men dressed like this have done impossible things before. Therefore, so must you. The fact that it all looks a bit absurd is part of the point. The sheer impracticality of these items advertises commitment. If you're willing to go into battle carrying something that makes no logical sense, you must be serious about who you are. Then there's humor. Humor is the grease that keeps this strange machine running. Without it, the social pressure to be calm and brave would be unbearable. Jokes allow soldiers to acknowledge the madness of their situation without breaking the spell. Muttering, "Trust us to invade in this weather," while soaked to the skin under fire, says 3 things at once. The situation is awful. It's also faintly ridiculous, and you are still part of an us that can comment on it. While other armies use humor, the British version often punches down at their own side. This self-mockery leaves little room for arrogance, which is surprisingly useful when dealing with failure. If you never believed you were perfect, it's easier to recover when you prove it. Improvisation might seem purely practical, born from shortages and messy logistics, but it has a psychological edge. Being told the equipment is inadequate, but they'll fix it in the field, is an invitation to become a co-author of your own survival. You're not just a cog in a machine. You're the mechanic, the tinkerer, the trickster. From homemade armor to cleverly wired radios, each little hack becomes proof that you can bend your circumstances, that you aren't just at the mercy of fate. In a terrifying environment, that feeling of control matters as much as any piece of gear. Finally, deception takes all these traits and turns them outward. A culture that loves telling tall tales in the mess hall is perfectly suited to inventing phantom armies on paper. Officers raised to notice subtle social cues and status signals make excellent forgers. A nation that prides itself on eccentricity finds it completely natural to use inflatable tanks and corpses with fake love letters as serious tools of war. To a rigid, literal-minded enemy, this feels alien and unnerving. How do you fight an opponent who behaves like a magician, half joking until the moment something explodes? Of course, these habits have a dark side. The cult of understatement can make it difficult to talk honestly about trauma. The celebration of eccentric officers sometimes excuses reckless behavior that gets people killed. The myth of the plucky improviser can be used to cover up for poor planning and chronic underfunding. But even these flaws are part of the story. British society has mythologized its 20th century wars, and in that mythology, the eccentric soldier is a star. He's the unflappable colonel, the cheeky private, the undercover genius forging signatures. He lets a country remember grim events not just as tragedy, but as tales of people who faced horror with a crooked grin and an umbrella. Think about those old war films. They often contrast the tidy, ruthless efficiency of the enemy with the muddled, joke-cracking British. This framing is its own kind of psychological comfort. It says, We were smaller, odder, less prepared, but somehow we won. These eccentric habits become proof of a national character, a way of insisting that victory came not just from resources or luck, but from something inherently, indefinably British. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this look into military culture, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.